thanks for joining us for the Horse Trust webinar on the ASAB accreditation process for certificated clinical animal behaviourists. While we're waiting to start, we'll give it a few minutes. It'd be great if you could answer our poll questions so that we can get to know you all a bit better. So we'd really like to know where you are in your journey to becoming a registered animal behaviourist. So if you can pop some answers on that first, that would be great. Just give that a minute. I'm going to take a slurp of coffee while we're doing this. Okay, let's see what the poll says. Our wonderful assistant Alice is doing all the poll tech. Okay, so yeah, so most people are working towards achieving the academic requirements. Fantastic, and we've got a second webinar that'll be great for you. And welcome to everybody that's just finding out more as well. So excellent. Okay, so I think we'll get started. Thanks again for joining us for the Horse Trust first webinar on the route to becoming a clinical animal behaviourist. I'm Leanne Preshaw, the Equine Quality of Life and Research Director of the Horse Trust. The Horse Trust is running these webinars because we're really passionate about supporting the development of our future clinical animal behaviourists, or CABs. And having more equine CABs will help to improve the welfare of horses across the UK by allowing more owners to access reliable and evidence-based behavioural advice for their horses. But I think it's fair to say that for most people, the route to becoming a CAB is really confusing, not least because of all the very similar acronyms used, which just confuse people even if they've been working in this area for a long time. So our aim with these webinars is to try and make the process simpler and clearer so that you all know what's involved and how to get there. And before I hand over to Nat, I'm just going to provide a little bit more background about the whole scene. So there are currently 2 routes available to people wanting to become equine CABs, registered with the Animal Behaviour and Training Council. So that's the ABTC, and they're the regulatory body for animal trainers and behaviourists. So the first route is the Association for the Study of Animal Behaviour, also known as ASAB. They have an assessment pathway that's independent of practitioner organisations, and that leads to ASAB accreditation as a certificated clinical animal behaviourist, or CCAB. And members of the practitioner organisation, the Fellowship of Animal Behaviour Clinicians, or FABC, will typically go through this ASAB process. We've also got the Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors, or APBC. See where I'm going with the acronyms? They're another practitioner organisation, and they've recently developed their own assessment process. So we're hoping to have someone from the APBC on to do a webinar on that in the future. But in the meantime, you can find out more information about that process on their website. And they've also got a YouTube video with Claire Klima, who talks about her experience of going through that process. So that's really useful. But essentially, once someone has passed their CAB assessment through whichever of these routes they take, they can go on to apply and to be on the ABTC's Register of Clinical Animal Behaviourists, and that is via their practitioner organisation that they're a member of. So I hope that's set the scene for this evening's webinar, and I apologise again for all the acronyms, but we can't avoid them. So we're kindly joined tonight by Nat Light, who's going to provide an overview of the ASAB CCAB assessment process. So Nat's an ASAB accredited, certificated clinical animal behaviourist for dogs. It's a real mouthful.
It really is.
She's worked in the companion animal sector since 2006. She runs a busy behaviour business, and she's also doing a PhD, so she's clearly mental. She's the administrator for ASAB accreditation, and she assists on the ASAB the ASAB accreditation committee with admin behind the scenes. She also helps respond to emails, manages social media and the website, and she liaises with applicants on their CCAB journey. So if you're applying for CCAB, you're going to spend a lot of time chatting to Nat. Before I start, I just wanted to cover a few housekeeping issues. So you can post questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So if you can put questions in the Q&A for us rather than the chat, that would be brilliant. Nat split her slides into sections. So at the end of each section, we're going to stop and have 5 minutes for questions. So do type the questions in as they occur to you, and then we'll have a little bit at the end where we'll just try and wrap up any outstanding questions we haven't got to. So we're going to be recording this webinar, and it will be available for you to rewatch afterwards. So we'll send that link later. Great. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Nat, and we'll start recording.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone at the Horse Trust for inviting me along. I really hope this is going to be useful and interesting for everyone tonight, and I really hope that I've pitched it right. So hence me putting in lots of space for questions, because I know from my own personal experience it is tricky to navigate getting yourself accredited, really. Managed to dig out a picture of me with a horse just to prove that I can be in the same space as them. But I'm actually, I specialise in dogs. I'm accredited for dogs through ASAB. So this is my motley crew. Just an excuse to put them in my slides, really, to be perfectly honest. I'm based down in South Hampshire. And it's nice to look at some pictures that remind us of spring, don't you think? It's all on its way. So what I'm going to be talking to you about tonight is the new shiny ASAB accreditation route to becoming a certificated clinical animal behaviourist. Now, there's been quite a few changes because the ASAB Accreditation Committee worked really hard last year to align the assessment criteria and what's expected of applicants in a really stringent process. So I'm going to go through that tonight with all of the different stages of application. So some of you, you know, about a third of you were saying that you're not thinking about it, but hopefully from hearing some stuff tonight, you might start that journey. Those of you that are working towards your pre-certification, brilliant. I look forward to hearing from you, and hopefully tonight is going to help you sort of plan out the next couple of years once you've got your pre-cert, and also clarify what you need to do to actually get that pre-cert under your belt. So everything that I talk about tonight is available on the ASAB website. So hopefully it's easy to navigate. We've been doing some work on there to make things user-friendly, but it's very hard when you know a process inside and out to then look at it from a fresh perspective. So if any of you have any feedback about what's missing or what would be useful or what's confusing, then please do let me know, and I'll give you the contact details at the end of the presentation. So this is what our website looks like, just so you know you're in the right place if you go there. And the buttons at the bottom hopefully help you to kind of click on the right thing depending on the stage of the journey that you're on. As Leanne said, ASAB accreditation is an accrediting body within ourselves. I am the kind of admin support. I'm not a committee member, but I work closely with the committee and sort of disseminate the decisions that are made on a committee level to applicants and our practitioners. We sort of keep a separation from the practitioner organisations in terms of supporting applicants outside of the assessment, because we feel that that really benefits us to be an impartial assessor. So this is one of the routes to getting onto the ABTC CAB register. So that's the Animal Behaviour and Training Council Clinical Animal Behaviourist register. You can't join that register as an individual, but you can join it through a practitioner organisation, and you can join a practitioner organisation by going through the ASAB accreditation process. So hopefully that makes sense. So if you come to us, you go through a pre-cert, you go through your assessment, and you get your piece of paper that says, I am now a CCAB. You appear on our website, on the ASAB accreditation website. We have our own register of practitioners. But also you can then take that piece of paper to a practitioner organisation, and they will be able to join you as a full member and then administrate the process of you going on to the ABTC website and register. That again was a lot of acronyms, so I hope you're all still with me. So this is the kind of stage-by-stage process. If you're coming to ASAB accreditation completely green, so you may have just done your A-levels, you may be starting already on an undergraduate course, you may be looking for a career change, all sorts of different backgrounds come into behaviour, and you know, I love hearing about how people get that eureka moment that what they want to do is work with non-human animals in a behaviourist role. So I've split the talk tonight up into these steps, and this flowchart again is available on our website. So in summary, step 1, complete your academic study. So that's to do with getting the theoretical knowledge behind you, so that you can then add the practical skills and counselling skills required to meet the CAB, the Clinical Animal Behaviourist standards that were written and appear on the ABTC website. If you haven't looked at those standards already, it's definitely worth having a look. And the ABTC have recently changed their website around, but it's under the practitioner section. So you can then have a look at what our assessment process requires you to demonstrate. So step 1, complete your study. Step 2, develop your practical experience, and that can be through shadowing, supervision, mentoring, whatever you want to call it really. There have been changes to the amount of supervision and not having to put together a sort of portfolio of supervised experience for applicants, but we definitely still advise that you take your time with your supervision, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a bit. Once you've done your practical experience, you've kind of got 2 options, and a lot of people might have already joined a membership organisation as a student, because it's good to have that network around you. So those 33% of you that are currently in step 1, so completing your academic study, if you haven't already, then I would definitely advise looking at one of the practitioner organisations and joining as a student, because you can then get to know practitioners in your area. You know, it's a really supportive network. I'm a member of both FAB and ABTC, and you know, I call them my colleagues really, because you know, it's a really supportive network, and you can get webinars like this and all sorts, so definitely worth doing. For those of you that might be in the more experienced bracket, and you may have been working as a trainer or behaviourist for several years, and feel that you have enough practical experience under your belt, you can go straight to the assessment process if you want to. And that's because of the changes in the application process that we made last year, where supervision is not part of the application. It's certainly advised in terms of your career development and learning different things from different people. I applied to ASAB through the supervisory route, where you had to do a certain number of cases, and I absolutely loved it. I loved shadowing people. I loved being observed and getting some really good feedback in it. I still do that now as an experienced practitioner. then we can move on to our final step, which is step 3, which is the full assessment. So the scary bit, as some people might think, but hopefully I'm going to demystify that tonight, and you'll all be a little less worried about what the whole process and particularly the assessment involves. So when we look at step 1, we're thinking about the academic qualifications required for applicants to meet the CAB standards. And the way that ASAB Accreditation have approached this is we have given universities the opportunity, or course providers, not just universities, but course providers, the option to submit their courses to us, and the committee then goes through the learning objectives of those courses and maps them to the CAB standards. So basically, if you go and study a validated course, that means that your course provider has provided the information that you would otherwise have to provide to pass your pre-cert. Okay, so they've already done the mapping process for you. Currently, we have 3 validated courses, and that is the University of Lincoln MSc in Clinical Animal Behaviour, Harper Adams University BSc in Animal Behaviour and Welfare, the clinical route, and the University of Edinburgh MSc in Clinical Animal Behaviour, which is a fully online course. We've also got a provisionally validated course, which is at the University of Bristol, and that's their BSc in Veterinary Nursing with Companion Animal Behaviour. The reason that's provisionally validated is because in order to become fully validated, the course provider has to go through a whole year of teaching and assessing students, and then providing that back to ASAB to ensure that what they said they were going to do in the validation paperwork they have done. We get loads of questions about courses that aren't on our validated list. And because they're not on our validated list, it means that we cannot comment about the content and the suitability of those courses for pre-certification. And we can sometimes end up in a bit of a circular argument where my advice is always to go to your course provider and say, look, here's the standards, does your course meet this? And the course provider says, well, you'll have to ask ASAB whether our course meets it. And if we can't provide that information, the only way out of those 2 scenarios is your course provider applying to have the course validated, or for you to apply for pre-cert on the non-validated route, which is what I'll talk about in a second. So although there are lots of courses out there that aren't validated, it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to get pre-certification. But our advice for the easiest route, if you are looking at course providers and courses, and you're thinking that's going to be the start of your journey to becoming a clinical animal behaviourist, then those 4 courses there are probably your simplest way to get there. Any questions? I've seen 2 pop up. Are they relevant and a good time to ask about courses?
You have answered the question. The question from Sam Evans was about, are any of those courses online? So you answered the question already with the Edinburgh one.
Yeah.
I did have a slightly off the ball question.
Okay. I like those.
So there are courses that are validated by the ABTC. Mm-hmm. Are not on ASAB's ABTC list. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, that's because they haven't. That course provider has chosen not to apply directly to ASAB, mm-hmm. So you can't comment on it specifically. But I'm being cheeky here. Do you think it's likely then, given that the standards for clinical animal behaviourists are across the board, that if someone has done an ABTC accredited course, that they would also they'll still have to do the pre-cert form for a non-validated course, but it's likely that course will meet all the same requirements?
I would say that answer is above my pay grade,
And
and I'm going to have to put my best politician voice on. But if we are only likely to advertise courses that have been validated through our process, because we can say that for 100%. Okay. But I would say in terms of the non-validated route, there are loads of courses, the ABTC ones included, that are likely to provide those same learning objectives required. You're just going to have to do a bit more work to map your pre-cert application, that's all.
Yeah, okay, no, that's really useful. Okay, then we hang on. Yep, so Charlotte Launder from the Horse Trust, I've stolen your question and asked it in your place. So Charlotte also says, in regard to equine specific qualifications, she's completed a BSc in equine science and has her certificate and transcript modules. But as this was completed a long time ago, she doesn't have the learning outcomes. Will that mean that's not accepted? This may be, we've jumped ahead to the next
can you hold that thought, Charlotte? Because it's literally the next slide, if that's okay. Because I'll talk through what we do in that case.
Fab, we'll come back to that one. Okay, Alexandra Wood has asked, do any of these courses that have been validated have a particular emphasis on equine behaviour?
Oh, to my knowledge, not in terms of, some of the more specialist courses that I've seen. But you would probably have to go to the course providers, I'm sorry, and ask them directly. Remember that to kind of bulk up, and I'll get to this as well, to bulk up your experience, there can always be sort of extra CPD bits, but I think that would have to be answered by the course providers, I'm afraid. I wouldn't want to steer you in the wrong direction there, sorry.
Yeah, I am just to chip in slightly. So I'm doing the ASAB masters I'm actually doing the postgraduate diploma at Edinburgh. Although there are some modules that I've had to do that are completely small animal, they have woven in some equine lectures, and also I've been able to pick sometimes the species for my assessment. So it's worth asking the course provider about those kind of questions as well, because even if it's not necessarily explicitly covered in lectures, you might still be able to tailor your learning to that to horses. So
yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of the assignments are quite flexible as well, so you can always sort of choose your chosen species to prove that you've been assessed in that particular species.
Yeah, so yeah, that's fab. Okay, so yeah, it's definitely worth contacting the course provider. But we would like to see a lot more equine content on these courses in the future.
Yes, and I think that's something definitely that the Horse Trust and all these amazing people that have joined us for the webinar tonight can help to put forward, because it's got to change the industry. And I think we were very much last year in a chicken or egg situation where we didn't have enough equine behaviourists to then provide supervision opportunities for new people coming through, but that's changing now and it's brilliant. And I think we'll be in a different place in 5 years time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we've we've answered all the questions for this section. So yeah, if you crack on, we will.
Fabulous. Okay, great. Right, so we're going to go through to pre-cert now. So still in step one, but it will be towards the end of your academic learning. So you've got there's kind of a fork in the road here in terms of what you've chosen and what pre-certification route you go down. For a validated course, so one of those 4 that I just showed you, it's a really simple form because your course provider has done all the work for you. You just fill out the form with your contact details, you attach a CV, you send us a copy of your university certificate, and you don't pay a fee because that's covered in your course provider's fee for the validation process. So that's really simple and easy, and won't require much more work than really just demonstrating that you've completed a validated course. There's also a route for non-validated courses. So if you're thinking, oh, oh my goodness, I studied 10, 15 years ago, I did animal behaviour, but it may not be relevant now, or I'm not quite sure what it included and whether it would have provided all of the learning outcomes, then the non-validated course route is what you need to go down for your pre-cert. And what you're required to do for your pre-cert for non-validated courses is map your academic experience against a quite comprehensive list of abilities. You also provide a CV in your university certificate, and it costs you £100. That's for the reviewers, because they take a lot of time to look through the information that you've provided and assess whether you've met the criteria. So this is what your validated course form looks like, again, all on the website. And this is the 8 subject areas that need to be demonstrated for your pre-cert if you've done a non-validated course. You'll see that they are at different levels, but the kind of highest level is level 6, which is an undergraduate degree. So a lot of people, I think, are concerned that they're going to have to go back to university and study. And, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing if you've got time on your hands and you can, you know, fit an online course in and you have the financial backing that you can do. But also a lot of these courses are offering modules as kind of one-off chunks. So if you find that, let's say you did animal behaviour at Chester University 10 years ago, and you mapped all of your subject areas and it was the clinical procedures that was lacking, then you could approach some of the validated course providers and see whether there is an option to just do that module. And I know a lot of applicants that have gone back and done that. It is tricky when you can't find the details of a course that was run, but I would say contact your university, have a look at your transcripts if you can find them, go into your parents' loft and find essay titles if you can. The important thing is that all of these subject areas need to be demonstrated by an assessed form of learning. So you know, attending a one-day course on something is fine, but actually you need to have had your learning assessed at the end of it, which is why formal education is an easy way to demonstrate it, because your work has actually been critiqued and you've got a grade for it. So there are some areas that we can look at that might be gaps. I'll cover this more in the pre-cert webinar in a few weeks. But I would do all the kind of digging that you can to find as much info as you can. And also some of the practitioner organisations have been sort of sharing information about people that have been on other courses, and you know, we're not saying copy someone else's pre-cert, but it might be that they have information that you don't have anymore. This is what the form looks like, and this is a section of how we would like applicants to fill out this form. So there's basically a table for each of those 8 subjects, and so the first column here is about the learning outcomes for the course. So if you do still have the syllabus, ideally that's where you'd plonk that. And then the details to demonstrate would be, let's say you wrote an essay on the process of domestication, then you would pop that in there. Okay, so it's really providing very clear and very concise and accurate information about how you meet each of these subject criteria. And again, I'll go through this more in the pre-cert webinar, because it's a subject on its own, and I don't want to take up all night talking about pre-cert. There's one little anomaly which Leanne might be able to talk about as well. I fell into this bracket because I did a zoology undergraduate degree when I first went to uni, and then I went back later on in my career to do a postgraduate diploma on a validated course at Newcastle. And because I didn't do the masters, it's only the masters that's validated. What I needed to do is map my learning, but we don't require as much information about the rest of it. So points or subject areas 1 to 7, if you're doing a postgraduate diploma on a validated course, so you're exiting the validated course before the master's qualification, all you need to do is put the titles of the modules in subjects 1 to 7, and then provide information about the research skills. So it's section 8 that a postgraduate diploma leaves you short of, because you're not doing the big research project that would then bump your accreditation up to an MSc. So, for example, with my application, I put the module names of all of the modules that I'd done at Newcastle. And then for section 8, I put loads of information about my undergraduate dissertation. So I did an enrichment study on pygmy goats, and I put all of that information in there. So if you're thinking, oh, crumbs, I might need to go back to university, have a look at what you've already done in terms of your undergraduate studying, and have a look at the mapping procedure, because it may be that you've actually got enough to go. You may need to do a little bit of topping up, but I speak to a lot of people that really think that this is out of reach in terms of what they've already put themselves through in terms of academic skills. But it needn't feel that you can't kind of get there through the different routes available. Any questions? I hope that all made sense.
That definitely made sense. That was super good. So Jessie Sanders said, is it only master's level research that's accepted for that section 8, not BSc?
Hi Jess, no, it's level 6, so BSc. Perfect. Which is why people like, I'm sorry, I'm speaking for you here, Leanne, but you know, going back and doing the PGD, I couldn't bring myself to put myself through another research project and work full time. So I just did the taught elements of the course, and then I knew that I had already covered section 8 with my research. I've actually had applicants as well complete section 8 and ask for the reviewers to look at that before they make their course choice, just to make sure that their undergraduate project would be accepted.
Yeah, it's very handy that that is an option, because that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm using my MPhil thesis for my section 8. Yeah. Okay, so Bethany Nichols asked, what if you have the diploma already and research experience, but outside of the behaviour field?
Oh, tricky one.
Oh, sorry, she's just added she's 2 years into the 3 years masters at Edinburgh.
Oh, okay. Then I wouldn't worry at all, to be honest, because you're going to be fine in a year's time. You'll be able to just stick your name on a postcard and you'll get your pre-cert. But if you wanted to apply for your pre-cert early, you could, because it's if you look at the marking criteria, hang on, let me try and go back here. It's research methods. So ideally, we want a relevant topic here, research project or dissertation on a relevant topic. So it should be a companion animal, ideally. But it's really the ability to put together a scientific study and analyse those results and show critical thinking that this section is all about. If I were you, I wouldn't worry too much. If you're on the MSc, just wait, there's no rush. Getting your pre-cert doesn't determine whether you can start your practical experience. Some supervisors or people that you're shadowing might ask you to prove that you've got your pre-cert, but you could pretty much say, look, it's guaranteed. There's nothing to stop you doing your theoretical and your practical concurrently, and then applying for your pre-cert just before you prepare for your assessment. Does that answer what you wanted?
We'll carry on and let Bethany tell us if it does. So Nicola Jolly says, I'm wondering, do you need to, the screen's gone mental. I'm wondering, do you need to study on an accredited course, or can you self-study for a missing area? I think you've covered that really, haven't you?
Yeah, the easiest route is validated route, as long as it's a level 6 qualification. So just check with your course provider what's on there, and then you just have to go through the mapping route.
Fab. Charlotte Launder said, is it worth completing a pre-cert early to identify gaps, or wait until you think you can definitely meet the criteria?
Completely up to you. If you are happy to forfeit 100 squids, then it is actually a really good way of identifying gaps. So if we find that there is a tiny omission of something, then we'll ask for that to be provided, and we can then give pre-cert. If it's big areas and you're actually looking to get feedback from the reviewers about what you should maybe do with some of your learning, and your little pot for CPD, then I would just be prepared to pay £100 for that, because it's a lot of work that the reviewers go through to screen all of those criteria and make sure they've been met. But there's nothing to stop applicants doing one kind of early to identify those gaps. But you just have to be prepared to pay again when you had filled those gaps.
That's fair. We're just going to wrap up the last bit of Bethany's question, and then Nicola and Sue will come back to your questions at the end, if that's okay. So Bethany said it mostly answers her question, but she's thinking of leaving at the 2-year point instead. But she's a research assistant and has medical research papers published in her name, but they're not related to animal behaviour. Okay. So would that still cover that Section 8 research bit or not?
I would say that I'd probably have to ask the reviewers about that. So ping me an email, Bethany, and I know a lot of applicants in the same boat, and they're asking the same thing. Shall I exit at the diploma stage? Because actually the project is seeming scarier and scarier, and I've got enough on my plate as it is. So yeah, ping me an email. We can talk about that in more detail once I probably need to know a bit more to say yes or no.
Fab. And Nat's contact details are at the end of the presentation as well. So fab. Yeah. Okay. If you crack on, then I will disappear. Okay.
Right. So we've gone to uni. We've done our studying. We've graduated. We've applied for our pre-cert either through the validated or the non-validated mapping route, or like I said before, we're on a validated course, so we know we're going to be okay with our pre-cert, and want to start getting some practical experience about what on earth this role of being a clinical animal behaviourist is all about. To be perfectly honest, those of you that were in that first category of thinking about applying, try and get some shadowing. I know things are impossible at the moment with COVID, but actually there are lots of opportunities to do online things like this. I think it's really important when you're investing so much to really know what you're getting into. And so the realities of the job and the different areas, we all call ourselves behaviourists, but we all do such different things. So definitely seek out opportunities to find out a bit more about what the role actually involves. And for those of you that are very experienced and have been working in the field for a few years, or maybe you already work for an organisation such as the Dogs Trust or the RSPCA, you might feel ready for your assessment already. So there's no need for you to kind of go back and do supervision for, pay lip service to supervision. However, as I said before, it's always a positive thing, and I've learned something from every mentoring and supervision opportunity I've ever been lucky enough to have.
Nat, can I just interject on that point from the equine front? Yeah. So in addition to these webinars, we're also doing case study webinars. which might equate a little bit more to the old like level 1 style experience. So we're doing those on a monthly basis from now on to hopefully give people a little bit more of an idea about what cabs do when they're looking at behaviour cases. In the summer, we're hoping to start doing some more in-depth case studies with smaller groups of people to get more in depth, and we're working at hopefully cunning plans to help us do that. But you can also contact people who are already on the ABTC register for horses or equines, and ask them about if there are any opportunities to shadow them and things like that. So yeah, I'll shut up now.
Perfect. No, that's great. Brilliant interjection. Thank you, Leanne. So the Horse Trust are doing some fantastic work to provide these opportunities, as are the Fellowship of Animal Behaviour Consultants and the Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors. So you can't really join these organisations too soon. They all have student member opportunities. They all have public facing kind of pages for the public or for their members on Facebook and other social media, as do the Horse Trust. So get yourself in the network so that you can start really starting to think like a clinical animal behaviourist, because that's going to come in handy when you're then having case discussions and with, in the future, your assessment and the way that you talk about cases. As I said before, the level 1 and level 2 supervision forms are no longer required as part of your application, but we've kept them live and updated, and they're available on our website because we felt they were a really useful framework for when you are observing a case. So I've got a couple of examples here. So in the old days, level 1 was when you as a kind of newbie, you were going to watch an experienced practitioner run a case, okay, or be part of a group where a case is discussed. So you're not really, other than the discussion with the CAB, you're not directly dealing with the client or the animal in front of you. And these are the kind of questions that will be useful for your assessment eventually. And so hence me saying that I think the forms are still a very useful framework. So you'll see the importance of critically evaluating evidence and the quality of evidence, explaining the rationale behind treatment, being able to discuss potential competing explanations of behaviour. So that's your differentials. Demonstrating an understanding of the impact of medical history on behaviour. So for those of you that are just starting out, have a look at these level 1 forms, and this is what's going on inside a behaviourist's brain when they are first sitting down with a client. Then we've got the level 2 forms, which again are still available but not required as part of your application. And this is when you are taking a more active role in the case management. So I might, as the experienced CCAB, I might come and watch you, observe you, and be there as a support, so I can jump in if there's something that you're not sure about. But really the CCAB is kind of the safety net, and the level 2 mentee is kind of leading that consult, but under the guidance of someone more experienced. And again, these forms can be really useful about what to look at initially in the consult, how to sit down and really think about what happened in the consultation and where you're going to go next. So how to take a history, how you got to your assessment, what relevant treatment plans are going to be applicable to the case, and any professional considerations. So, you know, was it, in my case, for example, was it a dog that had a bite history and was still being let off the lead at the park, in which case we would need to put in there that under the DDA, that dog probably needs to wear a muzzle and be on a lead or a long line or walk in quieter areas, etc., etc. I'm sure that equine behaviourists have a lot of legal and safety issues that you need to go through as well, because of the potential risk with a much larger animal. Any questions on that, on gaining your practical experience?
We have not got any questions on that yet. So should we skip on to the next section and then we'll come back to this at the end if anyone does think of anything?
Yep, that sounds good.
Cool.
Okay. So once you've got you're starting on your practical experience, now there's kind of it's how long is a piece of string really in terms of when you feel that you've done enough practical experience. It's going to be different for different people depending on your background as well. For example, my personal journey from when I was about 12 years old, I was working in dog kennels, so I had a lot of handling experience already. That might not be the case. You might have not had family pets or been around companion animals. You've gone to university, you've studied, and then you graduate finding yourself needing to know one end of a horse from the other. So people come at the practical skills from a very different view. And so it's hard to say that you need to do X amount of experience before you're ready. But we've tried to put a number on it, and the requirements for your application are that you have this case log summary. Okay, so I'll go through that in a bit more detail, but basically the forms are all on the website. That fee is actually gone up and the grandfathering scheme has now closed, so I need to change that, but the forms are updated on our website. It's £280, which is for the whole assessment process. So when you're looking at preparing your application and getting ready for your assessment, you need to be ready to put all your personal information on there, have your case log summary, which I'll get to in a sec, provide evidence that you have passed your pre-cert. But to be honest, I have that on my records anyway, so don't panic if you've lost your letter. I've usually got everything filed away safely. You also need to provide 2 professional references, and one of these need to be a vet that has referred cases to you. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what level in your career we expect you to be when you are applying for your assessment. It's also worth keeping in mind you know, people that you've worked with well, and kind of priming them for whether they're happy to be a professional reference. And then your proof of payment. So when we are looking at the logbook, so this is the number of cases that you have seen, all on veterinary referral, and that you've led on. We have a number of minimum number of cases, which I'll get to in a second, but we also have the presenting signs that we expect you to have seen. So this list here appears in one of the appendices of the application form. And the reason that we've got these lists is because we are expecting applicants to have knowledge of and have led on all of the essential case presentations. And that needs to be evidence in your case log. We also expect you to have knowledge of, but not necessarily led on cases in the non-essential case presentation list. The reason we have these lists is because this is what your viva assessment will be based on. Even if you provide cases that don't involve, say, repetitive behaviour, we may ask you questions about that in your assessment. So when you're putting together your case log, we need you to be able to demonstrate exactly what those case presentations were. Okay. So we need 12 months and we need at least 10, but ideally more, sorry, that skipped on there, cases seen and led on veterinary referral. I'm keen that people don't see that 10 as something to kind of aim for in 12 months. Our renewal process is 20 cases a year. And I would say that in terms of shadowing and mentoring, I probably observed at least 20 cases before I even started thinking about seeing clients of my own. And they can go in your logbook as supervised cases. So for example, here I would write what species and the fact that I was being observed. But then once I'd got on in my career a little bit, I can put that I was leading and I led on this. And in the case presentation column here, that's where you would put one of these 5 presenting signs. Okay, there might be other ones that you think of, but ideally we've tried to keep these quite generic to encompass most of the common behaviour problems that you might be expected to deal with as an equine behaviourist. They're different for dogs, different for cats. Also in the appendix of the application form is a reference letter, so you don't even have to write the letter yourself. There's a template there. And that's that in terms of the application. So any questions on that? I saw some popping up, so I don't know if they're relevant on that section there.
There are.
Excellent.
I can probably answer one for you because it's very equine-y. Gillian Amos has asked, I can't find any equine CCABs in Scotland. Are there any orgs here where this is a possibility? So Gemma Pearson is a veterinary surgeon based at Edinburgh Vet School. So she has recently achieved her CCAB for equines. I don't know if it's something where she would be taking on people for supervision cases, so you'd have to contact her directly. The joy of the current situation is that a lot of behaviourists are doing virtual consults now. So even if there isn't one in your area, you might find that there is, if you go to the ABTC register, which is what it's like the overarching register. So whether you're a member of FABC or APBC, it's got everybody on it. Look for the horsey people, and if you contact them, you might be able to find people that are providing supervision opportunities online. It's worth a shot.
Definitely.
So sorry, I'll keep the trap shut now.
No, that's really useful, and I completely agree with you. I think you know, geographic location is less of a problem at the moment, and I would use COVID to your advantage and try and get as much observation or supervision or shadowing, whatever you want to call it, as you can. And you know, going back to that first slide, just join social media, you know, decent groups, so the FAB ones, the APBC ones, and just get to know people. They are around. Yeah, just finding them.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the horsey people.
Exactly.
Gillian's also asked, I thought you couldn't take referrals or practice until you'd completed the full process. I think by that she means that you've obtained CCAB.
Okay. No, we should all be working on veterinary referral from the offset, really.
I think she probably means more practicing as a consultant.
Okay.
As in, you know, you're building up your case log.
Yes.
I think she's saying she didn't think you could start to build up those cases until you'd actually become certified.
I think it's up to different people as they go along their individual journey, and that's where the practitioner organisations come in. So it's about supporting people through that. I certainly wouldn't be advising people to take cases on before they feel ready, or that are out of their comfort zone, or out of their knowledge or ability, and that's something that I know the practitioner organisations are working really hard to do. It's tricky from an ASAB point of view because we're trying to be that kind of independent assessor. So other than providing the register of people that you might be able to contact to do that, I think that's a conversation to have with the practitioner organisations as to when you are kind of competent and ready to run those cases under the support and guidance of an experienced practitioner. But vet referral isn't just a vet giving you cases. Remember, if someone comes to you with what could initially seem to be a training query, I would be contacting their vet to make sure that they're okay with them seeing me, and that is vet referral. Getting that signed piece of paper. It's not that the vet has phoned me up and gone, Nat, can you see this case? It's if Mrs. Bloggs phones me up and says, Nat, can you help me with Mr. Goggins? I phone their vet and I get the referral. So I think that can sometimes be a bit confusing, that process.
Yeah, and I think with most horse cases, realistically, it comes from the client first.
Yeah.
Rather than the vet. So, which is exactly what Jessie's just said about finding equine vets are less likely to refer directly. Jessie, we'll come back to that question. I think that's probably slightly less for the ASAB process. Okay, so right. Bethany said that Gemma's not taking supervision at the moment and only takes Edinburgh students there. So I don't, that's a whole separate thing. I think we'd have to chat to Gemma about that.
Well, that's where these case study days that the Horse Trust are running come in. You know, they're going to be amazing opportunities for people, regardless of where they're living, to just get into that mindset of those questions that I showed you on the level 1 and level 2 forms.
Yeah. And what we're also, so we've got loads of plans for this in the future. Some of them we'll be able to do online, but also when life ever goes back to normal, we will be having case study days where we'll be having cabs coming in and our team being the client and working with our horses, so people will be able to come and get that experience that way.
Perfect.
So yeah, we're all on that. Okay, so Erica Jung said, do cases that have not come in through veterinary referral count? So she's in Canada, so that's a slightly separate situation, and vets really get involved in behaviour cases.
Well, I have bad news, Erica. At the moment, we are concentrating on UK accreditation, so people that are practicing within the UK. You can certainly put non-veterinary referred cases on your logbook, but they won't count towards your final amount of cases because of the very stringent code of conduct and best practice, really, because medical differentials are a huge area of our work, and we need to be able to say that we're not working outside of our competencies, and we can't do that as behaviourists. We have to ask a veterinary professional to tell us whether there is a medical component. We can't look at a horse or a dog and say whether there is a medical component. We can, in terms of our experience, I'm sure that all of you listening could look at a horse or a dog and go, that doesn't look right. But it's not our job to diagnose, and we shouldn't be having those conversations with clients. That needs to go back to the vet. So that's why we're very strict on all cases having veterinary involvement. Yeah,
and I think we'll do a whole other webinar on the vet referral aspect in the future, because it's a joyful minefield. So Hannah Hawkins says, as a dog behaviourist for a rescue organisation, she liaises with the vet regarding behaviour problems, but it's usually her referring dogs to the vet to rule out health problems. Does this still count as a vet referral? So yes, we've said as long as it's going through the vet.
Yes, Hannah, you need to have an auditable paper trail that you've not put your hands on that dog or advised anything before you've had a signature from a vet to say that you can take on that case, basically. So it's one thing to refer an animal back to a vet, but the referral needs to come before your involvement in that case. You might need to look at your practices within rescue, because we've had this with a couple of other applicants where they have an on-site vet, so it's kind of assumed that the animal has been seen by a vet during intake, but there's no paperwork associated with that. So it's definitely worth looking at internal processes to cover yourself and to make sure that the animal isn't being treated without that medical consideration, and that your cases can be added to your logbook. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, because once you've had that referral, so let's say I get a call tomorrow and I've got to go and see a dog, pretend COVID isn't happening. Unless I've spoken to the vet and got the paperwork, I shouldn't be leaving home to go and see that dog. So that's the referral. If I then go and see that dog and he's very clearly on 3 legs, or, you know, he's vomiting profusely, I'm then referring back to the vet for things I have observed. And that's very different, because we're already then a team. We're already a team where we can talk about the case. Hopefully that makes it clear.
Yeah, it does. That's really good. Thank you. Right, we'll let you crack on with the next section now.
Okay, we're doing all right for time, aren't we? We're okay. Right. Last section is step 3. This is a really bad photo, I'm sorry, but it's a lot clearer on our website, so you can go and have a look. This is your viva assessment. So once you have done your learning, got your pre-cert, you've got your practical experience, so maybe you've got a couple of years under your belt with at least 10 veterinary referred cases that cover the essential and desirable lists of being led on, you can start to prepare for your viva assessment. Now, at the moment, these are taking place on Zoom, which is great. And the way that we frame our discussions is a kind of face-to-face interview, very simple question and answer format. And we base the questions around 4 client reports that you provide us with. So basically, if you come to me and you say, Nat, I'm ready to apply for my assessment, we'll get a date in mind, and then I will let you know, or you will tell me when you are ready for me to choose 4 cases from your case log. And you have 48 hours then to provide us with the client report and the veterinary report for those cases. So that's why it's really important that you've got all of your paperwork in order for anything that goes into your logbook, because if it's chosen by me, we're then going to really kind of nitpick through that paperwork and make sure that everything's being done by the book. So it's a good opportunity going through the CCAB process to tighten up your internal processes and make sure that you are adhering to all of the codes of conduct that are expected of us under the kind of legal framework that we work in, and adhering to best practice. So they're based around case management. If you look at the level 1 and 2 forms, pretty much from start to finish, that's what the questions are going to be about. They're going to be about critical analysis, assessment, differentials, the quality of evidence, legal issues, safety issues, risk assessment, management, what treatment did you give, why, how was it relevant? And we will use your client reports as an example. So if we have a horse called Bilbo, we would say, okay, so for Bilbo, you advised this. How would that have been different if he was showing signs of something else as well? So we'll use those real life cases to kind of build scenarios. There are also scenario-based questions relating to the presenting complaints list, so that essential and desirable list. We try and get through them in an hour and a half, because there's about sort of 15-20 questions. We allow 2 hours and we cut off after 2.5 hours if things are going on too long. Anyone that has been through mentoring and supervision and on the fantastic study days, case study days that like the Horse Trust are putting on, should be able to go through this assessment with no trouble at all in the time allocated. So the reason we have the cutoff is just because we needed to end it somewhere in terms of the amount of time given to the applicants to show their thinking. Your fees included in the original application payment. You have 2 reviewers. It's, as I said, it's an online Zoom call, it's recorded, and it's not a memory test. So you can refer to your notes throughout the assessment. You'll already know which 4 client reports we're going to be talking about, so you can revise those. And we offer mocks, so it's a 45-minute mini exam based on a couple of cases from your log report. It's £35, and that's just with 1 reviewer, just going through and giving feedback on how you've answered, and giving some tips about what you might need to brush up on before your assessment. So I know that, you know, sitting and talking and being asked questions for 2 hours might seem really daunting for people, but please believe me, we want to get the best from you. We want you to do brilliantly. And hopefully I'm showing that it's not scary. You know, I've been an assessor on a lot of vivas. Hopefully I've put the applicants at ease. If you really want to look through how we are assessing your responses to our questions relating to the ABTC standards, so the CAB standard, that's all on our website as well. So this is just page 1 of a 20-something page document that was put together by the accreditation team, and this is all the hard work they've been doing behind the scenes, which is fantastic. So we've got PC1 here, performance criteria 1, which maps to the CAB level. In stage 1, that's your client reports that you provide, so that's how we look to see whether you've demonstrated this particular performance criteria in your case logs. Stage 2 is in your viva, and stage 3 is your practical exam. So to crib up for your assessment and to get a better idea of the kinds of things that you are going to be expected to demonstrate, this is a fantastic document and is available on the website, as I say. So it's all out there. It's an open and honest assessment procedure. The process has been stringently mapped. It's fair. It's very well structured, and it's all there for people to have a look at and see what you're going to be assessed on. Any questions about the viva?
Okay, so Bethany Nichols has asked, what happens if you don't pass? Do you have to start all over again?
You just apply for the viva again. So because the supervision route kind of isn't there, it's not a case of going back to the start, really. You will get comprehensive feedback of the areas that you weren't successful in or that you were unable to demonstrate. And then we will give you a kind of time frame of when you can reapply for the viva. So your pocket will take a bit of a hit. And we would hope that with most people going through this kind of supported route with the practitioner organisations, then doing a mock, you know, having conversations with me over email, we really hope that people aren't getting to that stage and failing, or sorry, failing sounds horrible, not meeting criteria. But, you know, we have a really good feedback procedure in place. That's where the marking criteria comes into its own, because we can highlight the areas that maybe you weren't as strong on, and then you come back and you try again, hopefully.
That's really fab. It does sound like a very nice supportive environment in terms of you want to get us through. Oh,
completely, completely. Why wouldn't we? We want more people doing brilliant things for our companion animals. So
definitely. And the horses, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Fab. Okay, so just we've got a couple of questions possibly going back a step as well, looking at case studies again. So are ridden problems considered as cases in your logbook that you submit?
Yes, let me just look back at the assessment. So what I would try and do there, I apologise, I'm not an equine behaviourist, so I don't know how well these fit in, but I would try and put them under one of these headings. I would probably go for management or performance related complaint for ridden issues.
To be fair, you could quite easily still have fear of an inanimate.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless it's kind of a saddle or an equipment issue, you could put fear of an. I'm hoping those headings, you know, you're not looking at them and thinking, oh my goodness, I've never seen that. But just think, we've tried to keep them very broad, and so you could put more detail in your case log about exactly what repetitive behaviour or what inanimate object the horse might be worried about. but yeah, I would just go for the closest match, to be honest, and put details, and then if we need some more information we can ask for it.
That's really helpful.
Okay.
Bethany Nichols has asked if she's applying for 2 different species, take it there has to be 2 logbooks, 2 vivas, 2 application fees, etc.
Right, okay, so what we would advise at the moment, because of the way things are, choose a species, apply for that, and then once you're through on that species, you have a smaller combined viva and practical for your secondary species, because you won't need to do a whole 2-hour viva, because you've already demonstrated things like different, you know, they go cross species, differentials, case management, counselling skills. So rather than putting yourself under the stress of trying to put everything together for both and the money side of things, choose one, Bethany, that is kind of your lead species, and go with that, but keep your logbook just, you know, recording your cases in the background for the secondary species. Once you're through with your first one, then think about your second. That would be my best advice at the moment.
Very sensible. Okay, Alexandra Woods asked, she's an equine vet looking to specialise in behaviour. Can she refer behaviour cases to herself?
No, sorry, you can't. You can refer cases within the same practice. So the paperwork would have to come from one of your colleagues, but you'd also have to show that they weren't an ongoing patient of yours. So I think similar to the question of, was it Hannah that worked in rescue? I think you'd probably have to just look at internal processes and make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and that you're not going to become unstuck with some potentially you know, dodgy audit trails. So you'd have to address that your colleague was referring to you and you had not seen that patient before. I hope that makes sense.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good. We've got a couple of questions about the practical exam, but that's the next section, so I'm not going to ask those.
Right, okay, so I will crack on with it and then we can answer those afterwards. So once you've not so much been grilled, but been very supportively asked lots of questions and demonstrated your ability to manage a case, you will receive an answer about your viva assessment within 2 weeks, we say, but usually it's pretty much within a few days. You can then move on to your practical assessment. Before COVID days, we were looking at doing, you know, big assessment days where we would do the viva and the practical together, but actually we found that doing the viva online and then the practical separate has worked really well, and we're going to continue with that once things open up, because actually from an assessor point of view and from an applicant point of view, it's quite a lot to do it all in one go, so it's nice to break it up. Also, the practical assessments require quite a lot of logistics, as Leanne knows from our toing and froing of emails, trying to get the right examiners in the right place and then the applicants in the right place. And so we really want this to be kind of the final stage of that assessment process, having done the viva. So the practical assessment is an hour. In better days before COVID, it was a kind of face-to-face with 2 examiners and then a client and an animal. We're unable to do them at the moment, so we do have people on the waiting list for practical assessments for horses and dogs. We haven't been able to do any cat behaviour because it just, you know, it just doesn't work in terms of social distancing and COVID safety. But hopefully that will all change and we'll start to pick things up. I don't want that to put anyone off going through the viva assessment and then getting on the waiting list. It's all done in order, so no one will be jumping ahead of you. And the structure has worried a few people because it's a bit of an unknown, and I understand how that could be a bit scary. But basically, it's a training one-to-one. It's not a mini behaviour consultation. If you want to see the kind of things that we are looking for you to demonstrate, you can look back on that big table with the green highlighting and look on column 3, which is the practical exam, and you can see what we're looking for you to be able to do. Basically, it's all the things that we can't see in the viva. So the viva is about your thought processes, what's going on in terms of how you're assessing this case and how you're going to treat this case. The practical is about, you know, are you polite? Can you work with a client? What are your counselling skills? Do you know one end of a horse from another? Are you able to pick up on body language of the human and the non-human and adjust your treatment accordingly? And are you able to think on your feet and be presented with something that you then make a little training plan for? So the format is that you will you turn up, you'll be given a summary of a case. So we'll say, this is Bilbo the horse, he's really scared of clippers. That's pretty much what you'll get. And then you're expected to take over. The examiners are there to observe you, and then there's a short sort of question and answer section at the end, 5 or 6 questions, or anything that the examiner might need a little bit more information about the way that you've dealt with that particular case. For simplicity reasons, they are going to be quite simple problems, and you don't get them in advance, because that's the job that we hope that everyone will be able to do, to be able to see a problem in front of them and work through it methodically with the client and the animal. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone at the Horse Trust, because they were fantastic at accommodating us for some equine assessments, and hopefully they went well, and it was just great to be able to have access to that kind of environment, because it's very tricky otherwise to get everybody in the right place at the right time.
We loved having you. Great.
Oh, good. Thank you. So there's just it's this one here, this stage 3, practical animal and client interaction assessment. That's what we're looking at. I don't want anyone panicking and thinking it's something mystical, and we're going, you know, you're going to have to start lassoing wild horses or anything. It's just, it literally is you being able to do your job practically. So hopefully that clears things up a little bit. Any questions?
We haven't really got any questions on the practical assessment. Millie's asked about what it might involve with horses. I think you've covered that. Millie, come back to us if you want more info. But otherwise, should we crack on with the next bit?
Yeah, okay.
Super.
I think I've only got a couple more slides. So step 4, I just added this in just so that you know what to expect ongoing. We have an annual renewal process. Now, our practitioner register is what you would then show to go on the ABTC CAB register through your practitioner organisation. But on our own website, which some vets do use to find someone to take on cases, we also have a non-practicing category, which we've launched for the first time this year, and a retired category. So you can continue to be on the register, even if you're not seeing cases. So a couple of applicants have chosen to go down this route where they're in a new kind of educational role, or maybe they're working for a rescue organisation, or somewhere like the Horse Trust, where they might be in a different role and maybe overseeing cases rather than leading on them. It's 60 quid for your annual renewal, and you have to just show that you've got adequate insurance and that you, if for the practitioner register, you've been clinically active. So that's a minimum of 20 veterinary referred cases within a 12-month period, which most of us, if we're working kind of at capacity, is easy to do. We've had to make some exceptions for last year because of COVID. We have been accepting online consults, but also a lot of people have been unable to work because of childcare or for whatever reason. So we also ask for CPD, which, you know, hopefully we're all doing anyway, and really keeping good records of any mentors that you might be working with, or things like this, educational things. So I don't think there's going to be any questions about renewal. So I'll just skip forward to getting organised. So this is kind of my take home message for all of you. Some of you may have done some of these steps already, but if you are considering starting your CCAB journey and getting accredited through ASAB, then my top tips for you are: join a practitioner organisation. So have a look at what they can offer you, even if it's at a student membership rate. Update your CV. Complete your pre-cert if you're at that stage. If you're validated, I wouldn't worry about that too much, because the minute you get your certificate, you can just stick your name on the form and send it off, and I'll send you your pre-cert straight away. But if you're going through the non-validated route and you've got to do your mapping, it's quite an undertaking. So maybe start having a look at that, and definitely tune into our webinar on the 9th of February about the pre-cert process. I'll go into things in a lot more detail for that. Always think about this sort of networking and vet practices and people that could be a reference for you. Keep in touch with them. Start your case log and keep it, so you don't have to then go through your diary and look at all of the paperwork. You know, this is a great time in our lives to be sorting out our internal processes and making sure that everything is password protected and everything's in order in terms of our paperwork. So really get yourself organised. Even if you're not seeing cases yet, it's good to know those processes. Look at contacting a local CCAB. Attend case study days or arrange them yourself. Leanne's given you some heads up about the horse trust ones, which I'm sure will be brilliant. And if you're a bit further on and you want to find out more about what the viva actually involves, if you're thinking of maybe applying in the next 6 months or so, then book a mock so that you can go through it yourself. We've got a Facebook page, so do find us, so you can, again, do a bit of networking. And then here's all of my details. So the website, which has absolutely everything on that I've talked about tonight. Any general inquiries about ASAB, go to asabaccreditation@gmail.com. Anything about applications, anything about that I've spoken about tonight, then email that through to me. So basically the entire committee look at the general inquiries, and the applications inbox is just me about applications. So hopefully that's been useful, and please contact me if you have anything you need. I know that Leanne's also put a feedback slide on here as well. So thank you for having me, and I am happy to answer any questions that may have come in.
That's very handy because we have a few.
Good.
We're skipping back quite a bit.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, actually, very quickly. So with pre-cert,
yes,
you only apply for that once you've graduated, you've got your POSH certificate in your hand. You can't do it once you've finished and you've got transcripts.
I've had a couple lately where they are not going to graduate for a while for whatever reason, and the admin office should be able to do you a proper transcript with grades, accompanied by a letter from a module leader saying yes, they graduated. So it needs to be more than, ideally, your certificate, your graduation certificate, but it needs to be more than just a list of the modules. It needs to be something official from the university. And most universities, the registry departments will be able to email me directly something that says, yes, they did this and they passed, and these are the grades. So
that makes it a little bit.
Sometimes the graduation is like 6 months later, and people want to crack on. So
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Fab. Okay. So Gillian had a question back in the beginning, but it was in the chat. So sorry, Gillian, that we didn't get to that. Slightly confused by ASAB and APBC routes. Are they both for CCAB?
No, right. Are we all ready for Nat's acronym language? So we've got the APBC assessment here. We've got the ASAB accreditation assessment here. They are both assessing for the CAB role, the Clinical Animal Behaviourist role, the standards of which are on the ABTC website.
Fantastic. And basically it's just it's only ASAB that calls you certificated clinical animal behaviourist, but you are, from the ABTC's perspective, still a clinical animal behaviourist.
Yes.
That's where sometimes people get confused between, is there a difference between CAB and CCAB? But they're exactly the same.
They're working to the same standards, the ABTC clinical standard of an animal behaviourist. It's just the accreditation that is different, and obviously the ASAB aren't a practitioner body. So our thing is CCAB. That's what you get, and you're on our CCAB register. But you can take that, because it's mapped to the CAB standards, you can take that to a practitioner organisation such as FAB or APBC and say, look, I've done it. And then they say, brilliant, you're in.
Yeah, welcome.
So yeah, I understand it is confusing, but maybe watch this bit of the webinar back about 10 times. You might get it. It took me years to get the hang of all the acronyms and who was what.
I swear they've been made as complicated as possible accidentally, but that's a whole different story. So Gillian's also asking about another organisation, a practitioner organisation. I'm not going to name it, but basically, at the moment, the only organisations that you can become a CAB through are APBC or ASAB. For equines, I know there is another dog organisation you can do it through, but they're not going to do horses. So these are your only two options. So there are other practitioner member organisations out there for behaviour consultants. Those practitioner organisations may be in the process of trying to become accredited through the ABTC to deliver assessments, but at the moment, unless they're ASAB or APBC, they can't do that. So it's worth chatting to other practitioner organisations about whether that's something they're applying for, what their plans are. But essentially, unless you're doing those two assessment routes, you cannot become a CAB at the moment. It's worth constantly checking back on the ABTC Animal Behaviour and Training Council's website, because they do update that regularly. But just to clarify, because I think there are quite a few other practitioner organisations about at the moment, and just to say, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, so bear with me. In the future, there will potentially be Royal College of Veterinary Surgeon accreditation of the Animal Behaviour and Training Council, and what we might find in the next 5 years, when that's happened, hopefully, that vets will be reluctant to refer to anybody that is not on the ABTC register. So yes, you can still go out and practice as a behaviour consultant to other practitioner organisations, but the way the world is now moving, you may find that you will struggle to get referrals in the future. Would you say that's an accurate assessment of where we are at the moment?
Yeah, and I've gone by the ASAB assessment and what that can get you in terms of practitioner organisations. Of course, there are other ones out there. I can't speak for them. I don't know their assessment criteria. So if there's questions about them, then please go to them. And I myself am a member of FAB and APBC, and they are the ones that I see as, you know, the top of the the kind of CAB network. Of course, there are other routes. There are other routes about everything because we're not working in a protected sector. But the route I've gone in my career, I think is the right way forward for whatever comes in with the RCVS.
Yeah, definitely. And just to reiterate with that, at the moment, if you want to become a registered cab, these are your only two routes available. That is likely to change in the future. There are likely to be more practitioner organisations trying to get accredited for this process as well. But at the moment, those are the only other two. So if you're a member of another practitioner organisation, speak to them about what their plans are.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully we've answered that one. I think we've answered this question. It was about applying. Do you apply for pre-cert during your study or once you've completed it? But we've literally just answered that a second ago. So you've got to have that transcript or the certificate saying I've done this.
Yeah, you've got to have been assessed.
Yeah, that's fab. Okay, so Sue Holloway's asked her dissertation for her BSc Animal Behaviour and Welfare, which she's now doing, is on agricultural animals. And you mentioned ideally this should be on companion animals. Will this be a problem?
I don't see it being a problem. We'll find out in your review. It shouldn't be. It's not on cloud formations. So that's what I meant by relevant subjects really. So I wouldn't panic there at all.
Fab. Okay.
No disrespect to anyone doing research into cloud formations, by the way. Just
very important, but not going to help you with animal behaviour.
And not relevant for this. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions related to the 20 cases per species once you're accredited. So actually, sorry, I've already answered Gillian's question there. So it's 20 cases per species. If you do more than one species, you need to make sure you've got the same number. What about if you only work part-time? You've still got to get 20 cases. I take it ASAB don't take into account how many hours you work when you're...
Yes, we do, because that's all part of extenuating circumstances. And you've got to draw a line in the sand somewhere and have a number. So the renewals, the committee have been brilliant about COVID, and the renewals are on an individual basis. But that predicament is exactly why we've instigated the kind of non-practicing register, because it means that you can still appear even if you're not regularly seeing case. You might see the odd case here and there, or you're in a role where that's not the biggest area of your work. But I would say it's a tricky one for me to answer because it would need to be run past the committee. But certainly you'd need to meet the application criteria, and then we would kind of cross the renewal bridge once we got to it.
But it's good to know there's options for flexibility in there potentially.
Yeah, I mean, people have babies, people get poorly, people have life-changing circumstances. We've got a policy in there about extenuating circumstances and how long people can not meet the case requirements before and remain on the practitioner register before they need to then redo their assessment or provide us with details of their CPD. Don't forget on the slide, it also said where you can't meet the case requirement, you need to demonstrate alternatives. So talks you've done, all of that stuff is taken into account.
That's fab. Bethany Nichols has asked, who does the CPD have to be accredited with, or who do you accept CPD from?
We aren't kind of tied to a CPD points thing. It's really just relevant webinars, teaching. There's lots of different categories of CPD that can involve you doing the disseminating of information. So if you go and give a talk to a vets, for example, and so we're not tied to a particular CPD. I mean, if it looks a little bit suspect and you're adding up your hours by reading BBC Wildlife magazine, I might pick it up in your CPD log. But I think most of us certainly I do. I easily meet my CPD once I start thinking about it. You think you don't do much, but actually, you know, you've already got an hour and a half here from coming on this webinar. So
yeah. Sorry, we're overrunning again a bit. Sorry, everybody, it's too exciting. Okay, so I think you might have just answered Millie's question. So on renewal, if you were on the non-practicing register and you wanted to go back to the practicing register, would there be any additional requirements?
Yes, so we've got that. I don't know it all off by heart, Millie, sorry, but we've got it all in our policy about what happens when you flip back. It is on the website, so have a little look, but I can certainly clarify it by email, but I don't want to say the wrong thing because it's a new policy, but we've got sort of timescales of when you can, you know, go off on maternity or leave and come back within a certain period without having to get reassessed. But at the end of the day, worst case scenario is if you want to go back full time again and it's been too long, you just go through the viva and you're back on the practicing list. But we have got all that sort of tightened up, but I don't know it off by heart, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fab. Okay, Ruth Abrahams. I'm studying for my MSc in Clinical Animal Behaviour part-time and will graduate in 2022. Is the normal route to complete this first before working towards CCAB assessment?
Did she say what university?
No, but I'm assuming it's at Edinburgh or Lincoln if it's...
So Edinburgh, yeah, if it's Edinburgh or Lincoln, you'll be validated. So the pre-cert will be really simple for you to do. Also, both of those courses have a brilliant support network for seeing cases. So you'll be able to get a flavour of some of the practical skills. I would say that your priorities would be sort of getting in the network. So join a practitioner organisation as a student, keep coming to these horse trust webinars and build up your contacts so that by the time you graduate, you've got some practical skills under your belt and you've got loads of people that you can bug for a reference and you know, crack on with getting your actual viva booked.
Yeah, fab. I think that's nearly it. We've had a couple of questions about specific practitioner organisations that are not FABC or APBC or ASAB. I'm not going to comment on those at all, I'm afraid. I don't think that's fair. If you've got questions about a practitioner organisation, I think you need to direct it to them. So that I think
the only reason I've mentioned two of the practitioner organisations is because they are the two that accept the ASAB accreditation. I'm not trying to show you know, favouritism or anything like that. I'm just saying that this is what's relevant for ASAB accreditation, which is really all I can comment on. And I agree with you, Leanne. I think go to the other practitioner organisations if you have questions about them.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like from my point of view, the reason we're bringing up those two specifically is at the moment, if you want to become an equine cab, there are only two options available to you, and that is APBC and their internal assessment, or ASAB, and then join FABC or APBC and go on their register. Because again, it's not just about the assessment. Once you've got your clinical animal behaviourist kind of qualification, you have to register through a practitioner organisation to go on the ABTC register. And at the moment, it's only going to be one of those two organisations. So, like I say, there may be other organisations that in the future, they're already maybe applying, or they're looking, or they're thinking about applying, but you'd have to contact them directly. Fab. I think we have answered all the questions and overrun in my typical style. So
that's all right. 7 minutes isn't bad.
That's pretty good for me.
Yeah.
So Nat, thank you so much, and thank you so much everybody for joining us for tonight's webinar.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for making it such a well subscribed webinar. I really hope it was what you were looking for.
It's fab.
Any feedback greatly received. Please have a look at the website, and hopefully those of you that want some more pre-cert questions answered, you can join us in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so that webinar is going to be on the 9th of February. We will be opening the registration soon. It basically, all the CPD that we're offering is going to be on our Talk Equine kind of site. So if you look at the Facebook group Talk Equine with the Horse Trust, or at Talk Equine HT, this is primarily where we're going to be advertising all these future events. So the next, we've got a case study webinar with Kaina Prescott, CCAB, on the 24th, Friday the 29th of January. But again, check the Facebook page because the dates have just gone up there. Nat's back on the 9th of Feb, and then we've got another case study after that. So look at the Talk Equine Facebook page. That's where everything's going. If you've got any feedback for us, or you'd like to suggest any other topics for future case studies or webinars or future CPD, I'd love to hear from you. My email address is on the slide, or you can send me a message at the Talk Equine Facebook page. We're going to be making a recording available shortly of this webinar, and we'll email you the link so that you've got access to it for 30 days. And that's very kindly also included a copy of her slides. And that is it for me. I'll zip it. Thank you very much again for coming, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.